Being surrounded, I am desperate and lost. I apologize for the length that this is going to be, but I'm having a major problem. I've been married for 5 years, been together for 10 years total. Known one another for roughly 12 years total. I thought things had been going well. We've had our issues. I was grouchier than normal in the last several months. But I felt that she wasn't talking to me, and seemed very sad at times. I would ask and she would just say nothing was wrong. I wasn't perfect. I had been going to bed later and later because it felt awkward in bed. I didn't feel fulfilled, and was looking at video, along with my grouchy behavior, but she was not communicating with me about anything meaningful, despite my constant attempts to work with her to tell me if something was wrong. I honestly believed that, as long as she loved me, we could get through our problems. Then at the beginning of this month, a few bad things happened in a row. A sort of perfect storm of occurrences. And I came home one day to my wife saying, "I don't know if I love you," and wanting to go to counseling. I was hesitant, because my parents had a very bad experience in which my father was held accountable for a lot of bad things that my mother was actually, and easily noted, responsible for. But in the end, I decided to go because friends told me I could get to the bottom of what was going on with her. I could address my own issues, and it would help us both save our marriage. Over the next week, a lot of stuff came out that I didn't know. I found out finally because I suspected something was up and I snooped in her emails. There I found a message to a friend stating, "I am out of here. But my parents are insisting on counseling first," because her parents thought it was necessary. Basically just stating that she was leaving me regardless. Utter devastation. Looking through the same emails, then I find one about a trip my wife took across the country to see family last month. And while they made contact with a man supposedly on a business trip that she had slept with before we were together. Call him Gerard, not his real name. Years ago, Gerard had used her, basically, but apparently, she has always continued to love him and hold on to him. And unknown to me, save everything he ever said and every email or text message along with long messages where she analyzes her feelings about him, etc. They met at his hotel and talked for 6 hours. She did not sleep with him. I believe that, but there was shoulder rubbing and long talks. Basically, an emotional affair she has been having with this person. At this point, a bunch of stuff clicked about her behavior. I confronted her, and she broke down and cried, told me that she was so depressed she had considered X herself, and that she was so sorry she went to see Gerard. She denied that the message meant she was leaving me, but I know exactly what I read. I left that alone though because I knew she was extremely emotionally unstable. At this point I knew we had really major issues to deal with. Yes, I had my grouchy behavior in video, but she had gone outside of the marriage for an emotional affair. Was torn to pieces by this, and was projecting and blaming my behavior all the way up till I finally found out she had seen another man. But I felt hopeful because I believed my wife was finally being honest with me and had opened up about her real feelings for the first time in a long time, which was a huge step. So, now, the counselor, let's just call her Ruth. Not her real name. She seemed nice enough, but she immediately jumped on me. "You don't respect your wife," because I walked in the door before my wife did. That was the only thing she drew that conclusion from. My wife has always been timid. She tells me it was a very bad boyfriend years ago, with social anxiety, along with the depression she brought into the marriage, so I've always taken lead. "Walking in front makes me uncomfortable," she would say. The first session wasn't exactly bad, but Ruth didn't address my wife's lying to me nor the visit to the man across the country. The first thing she said was that "you don't respect your wife" because I walked in the door in front of her. That was a slap in the face. My wife began to choke up once and Ruth handed her some tissues. More on that later. My wife did not say anything about either her first boyfriend or why she walks behind me to the counselor. She let me just get drilled. She addressed my wife's inability to talk to me but blamed that on my grouchy behavior. And also that I shouldn't ever look at video because it upset my wife. I agreed I needed to work on my grouchiness, and I was willing to stay away from videos to save my marriage. I was willing to do that, but I was rather upset that we didn't get to any of what was making me unhappy. I believed we would get to the other issues of my wife's later in counseling at a later time. But a few days later my 4-year-old daughter was playing on the computer and inadvertently found a private blog my wife was keeping, in which she went more into detail about what happened on the trip. That she had lied to me about several things, but worse than that, something like, "I can't believe I had to tell him about my special visit." The last person I would ever want to know about it. It makes me sick to think he knows about that. That he knows how bad my depression got. And again, like I was punched in the stomach. A meaningful moment where I believed my wife was finally honest, ruined by A. She wasn't being honest still, and B. She regretted even telling me anything. She also went on to say she had been reading my emails for some time and made some silly emotional projections about my completely innocent interactions with an old friend from college I had never dated, a friend I told her about 2 days before she went to see Gerard. I gave my wife several days to come clean. I even disclosed a painful memory to her about something that had happened to me in my teenage years. Still, nothing. She would not tell the whole truth about the trip. I was emotionally spent and unable to sleep. Finally, I broke down. I told her I had seen everything, and she went into, "Oh God, how could you?" Those were my private thoughts. I apologized, and I was sorry for having seen it. I hadn't even searched for that, but I had, and she was extremely angry with me. Not willing to talk about lying to me, etc. We moved the counseling up several days and went in immediately. Did not go at all as I suspected. Ruth attacked me nonstop. Rather than address the dishonesty, she told me I was childish for having looked at the journal, and that I was the dishonest one for ever having tried to get my wife to tell me the truth. What? I tried asking what I should have done. I addressed the emotional affair and the counselor attacked me again, saying that what my wife did was only because I was looking at video, as though the visit with this man was completely acceptable. Ruth went on to say that I was making excuses, that her behavior was all a direct reaction to things I had done, and that I refused to accept responsibility for my own actions. Yelled "You are a bully" several times at me, until I broke down in stunned silence. This time, as I cried, the counselor just sat there and stared at me, didn't offer me any tissues or support. I sobbed and asked what I was doing wrong. Ruth stated, "What do you think you are doing wrong?" Sternly, I even mentioned a book I had bought to read and try to figure things out. A relationship help book, and she snidely replied, "Well, I hope that helps you." My wife, again, did nothing to support me. The entire counseling session was an attack on me, my status as a man, and my behavior, and ignored everything she had done other than to basically say it was my fault for not being open enough. It was a really stunned ride home. I was basically in a fog. My wife was elated, which actually was the only good thing for me, until we were almost home and she said, "I'm really glad I went to see Gerard," at which point the wind was knocked out of my sails completely. Again, and worse yet, because she has affirmation from a counselor now that her visit to this man was all my fault. She also still wishes I didn't know about the visit. So that brings me to now. I feel hopeless and that I'm irrevocably damaged now. Aren't married couples supposed to be sharing information with one another? I was first to admit that I shouldn't have seen her private blog, but when information within that blog directly contradicts what she is saying to me in real life, what was I to do? It was an accident that I saw that anyway. I've never, and I mean never, looked through my wife's private things before. Now I regret ever having done so. Ruth didn't ever ask why I was looking at videos, didn't ask why I was grouchy. Made tremendous leaps of assumptions, and in the meantime my wife allowed me to be attacked the entire hour, including some absolutely ludicrous assertions by the counselor about my parents. I asked my wife later that night why she didn't come to my aid at all during the session. About her abusive boyfriend, about her suicidal thoughts. And my wife basically told me to shut up. That she agreed with everything the counselor had said. I told her to please never mention her feelings about Gerard ever again to me, and she just got grouchy and rolled over and went to sleep. Now I've been up since 4 a.m. writing this story. I know you are getting only my side, but I'm trying to be upfront about my issues too. I'm getting no help at all and I'm severely spiraling and I fear I'm going to lose my marriage. Am I really the one who is all wrong here? I don't know what to do. Today I'm supposed to go talk to the chaplain. I want to see a different counselor, but I'm worried that my wife will throw that in my face and leave me. How do I tell my wife how uncomfortable this counselor makes me? And also let her know that I am working to change the issues that I honestly need to work on. I don't want to come right out and say this is a bad counselor, but God help me. She is horrible. I took 3 years of counseling in college. Not an expert, I know, but that's enough to know you don't mess with someone's head like this. Now suddenly I'm really a wreck and my wife are all vindicated for all the bad things she has ever done. I bolded something that was brought up earlier today by my supervisor at work, who is also a peer counselor. She wants me to continue to work on maintaining my own more understanding behavior. Being helpful. She agrees that this counselor is likely causing me harm, but to wait and see if she actually goes after some of my wife's underlying issues later. The grouchiness is something I am not trying to gloss over. It was wrong on my part. I couldn't think of the word this morning, but it is passive-aggressive with some immaturity issues when dealing with certain conflict. I'm more likely to lash out at situations that irritate me when my wife isn't around, but I didn't realize that she could hear me sometimes, which was poor judgment on my part. I am now working on taking 10 seconds if any situation gets me edgy. A deep breath, think about it, and then move forward with what I wish to say or do. It is already working. She has been a lot happier this past couple of weeks. but I've been a lot less happy, which in turn is still conflicting our marriage. There is a lot that my wife brought into this marriage that I'm not going into detail here have not being addressed at all. Issues that have caused a lot of strain on me. My wife and I talked for 5 hours today about issues. Started with her yelling at me about disliking the counselor, but we settled on one more session in which I'm going to take a pen and notebook and take notes, follow along quietly, and if the counselor continues to attack me and blame me, we will look into a new counselor. Right now, everything has been placed on me, but perhaps this is some strange technique this lady has, thinking she needs to break me down abusively. Still not right. It is correct that I can only really make changes on my own behavior. The rest is up to my wife. We are both committed to staying in this marriage, and that part is really the best thing we have going for each other. That, and so far, at least my commitment to change. I haven't raised my voice at this woman, and last session she was practically screaming at me. I deal very well with conflict resolution. I was a problem caller specialist at my last job with a trading firm, but to sit here getting yelled at for really strange reasons is unnerving. So, things got a little more interesting last night. In counseling, the counselor blamed the videos I had watched for my wife feeling insecure and needing to see another man 2,000 miles away. The reason my wife knew about the videos was she has been searching my internet history for some time now. I used my wife's computer for the first time in 5 months last night, and in the drop-down address box I went to, a dirty site. So, I looked up her history, and probably 20 or so different times in 3 months she has been looking at a video website. So, the counselor's excuse that, "Oh, he looks at videos, that is why you went to another woman," is a little rocky now. I honestly know that my behavior has not been fair to my wife. I am working to change that, but my wife's sudden 20-pound weight loss in 2 months and her sudden massive depression are because of some other demons in her head other than me being passive aggression. Mainly unresolved feelings for a man she cannot have, that she went to see while in Florida with her family. He is from South America. I am making lots of headway all week long with her, and she admits a lot of stuff. But I fear the counselor will just throw it all in my face and blame me for everything again. And if I bring up the videos, fear she'll just say, "Well, it doesn't bother you, does it? Your wife is bothered by you looking at videos," in which case, she is violating the goose and the gander principle in philosophy, which is a huge no-no. My wife doesn't know that I have seen the dirty links as of yet and has made clear that the video is what bothers here, not the self-gratification. She says the gratification is fine as long as I'm not looking at video. The counselor has not ever asked why I look at video, nor has the counselor addressed why I am passive-aggressive. I don't understand that either. A huge part of why I do certain things are reactions to other issues in our relationship. One of our biggest issues is trust. Last year was just horrible because I found out about half a dozen times where B had done something and didn't say anything to me. From refriending that guy on Facebook, to a maxed-out credit card in her name. That led me to dig all the time into her stuff, something I had never done, like checking her phone and computer. She started to hide things, delete history, etc. In the meantime, it has become more and more questionable as to how long I can continue in this job, which further spikes the anxiety and stress. I fully accept my responsibility in this marriage for not treating her right, and for my behavior not just to her but around others. That really made her self-conscious. I love her dearly, but she is still not sure how she feels about me. She has admitted that her own insecurities and her unhappiness being at home with the kids alone every day played a big part in all of this. She says she loves me, just isn't sure she is in love with me. I've also realized what is important in my life. I would get rid of my sports car in a second if there was a choice between my family and the car, or her and the car. So, what I find myself doing is going way overboard on the feelings. I apologize for silly things I shouldn't be apologizing for. I am always asking her, "Are you okay? Or is everything all right?" Because I am so insecure about things. These days I'm taking meds whenever I need it to fight the anxiety issues. 2 years ago, April was the worst month of my life, but by the end of May I thought I was coming out of it. Had a good couple of months, then in October another fight. Another threat by her to leave. And I spiraled again for another month. Then was okay for a month in December. Then had a weak moment, read her phone, and saw some questionable comments about the other guy that sent me spiraling again. I've stayed away from her stuff since that day, but I find myself going up and down emotionally, especially late at night. Waking up with bad dreams about my deployment or about my marriage going bad. Now she is trying a lot harder to be open to me, but I've really lost a sense of my manhood in all of this. She still has this little secret part of her life that she keeps away from me, and before that didn't bother me. But in light of her visiting this other guy, it now really bothers me. She says she will never be with this other guy, but he may be getting divorced from his wife now. And that stresses me out further. Her journal was never read by anyone else, but her comments about him hurt me. It feels sometimes like something inside of me broke and I've never been able to put things back together again. I am not trying to hide anything from her. I go out of my way to make sure she has access to anything on my computer or phone. I don't clear my history. I make myself as transparent as possible. Even if she read this, I wouldn't care, because what I'm looking for here is advice. Not to help me get back to where I was, because I don't want to be that person, but to get back to being a stronger, better husband. Someone who is supportive of her and handles adversity maturely and responsibly. But with that in mind, I want to be able to confront her about issues that affect us as a family without feeling like, for lack of a better term, my manhood has been separated from my body. I fear losing her so badly that I wither even in the face of things like her friendship with this other guy and put up with it rather than putting my foot down about it. I want to believe that things are going to be okay, but my self-esteem is lower than ever. And while I do trust my wife more than at any time in the last 12 months, I am still so scared. What do I need to do with myself? What is the best course of action to take to find comfort and happiness again? Is it really that I'm so scared of losing my job, or is all of this still spinning off of losing my foundation that was the idea of my perfect marriage? I hate feeling this way. She is trying to be more open about communication with this other guy. That's how I found out he might be getting a divorce. In some ways, though, his current behavior has worked in my favor. When B went to see him more than 10 years ago, before we were together, they had slept together. Then he disappeared, for months. She makes excuses about it now, trying to make me believe he's a decent guy or something. But as man, I know the type of person he is. When he finally talked to her again, he was already dating someone else. This model he had met. They got married and have 2 kids, but apparently now he is separated and seeing at least one younger woman, maybe 2. She told me all about this one evening last month, and the next day I was thinking about what she had said. And I realized something. She is not in love with him. She is in love with the idea of him from when they first met. Still though, when you split your heart between 2 people, you can't ever fully appreciate the person you are with. I know this. I remember doing this years ago when we first got together. It is for this reason that I hold out hope. I know that during the time when I was confused about 2 people, I couldn't say if I were in love with B. I knew I loved her, but I was torn due to my ex. It was when I faced losing her that I realized how much she really meant to me. As far as what she has done about her friendship with this other guy, she has 3 times deleted him from her Facebook. Then a while later added him back. She no longer tries to hide his posts from me. He doesn't post to her page very often, but I know when he does. It affects her emotionally. She tries to tell me that she has no feelings for him, but I know better. Again, I've been there. I recognize that torn heart. Her biggest problem is communication. She's always been quiet about her feelings. She doesn't want people to know when she's hurting. At age 13 or so, her mother went off on her about her depression and how there are times you are such a burden to me. And B never really got over that. We are both givers, which makes things a little easier because we don't really take advantage of one another. But what I really want sometimes is the intimacy. Not talking so much about bonding, but the intimate communication. I've been going well with changing my passive-aggressive behavior. But I sort of slipped, and now I've gone from being abrasive to being overly sensitive and emotional. That's what I have to work on. I'll look into that book to see if that helps me get something going. Oh, and I'll be 40 years old in September. She is 6 years younger than I am. We have 2 children, 4-year-old girl, 2-year-old boy. The kids make it hard for me to ever really do my own thing. I love them so much and love to be around them. I used to always blame her for the communication problems. I felt like I was able to talk to her, so WTF is her problem with talking to me? What I didn't realize is that I was very negative about a lot of things. Instead of seeing the positive aspects, for example, of putting in some landscaping in the yard, I would bemoan the cost of plants that would likely die during the winter, and therefore little by little I would squash the little dreams of what she wanted to do with the house. I now realize that due to my negative responses to the times she actually did want to talk to me, I did a lot of harm to our overall ability to communicate. And that spilled over to the intimacy side also. She said a couple months ago that she wants to get those feelings of love back, but she also wonders if it is too late. If things have gone too far. I don't believe they have, and any help I can get here to help draw her back into the fold, so to speak, would be welcome. I know that chasing her at this point is not going to be an effective solution to the issues between us. But she is trying. I just have to be patient and let her sort out these conflicting emotions she is having and realize there isn't much I can do other than being a supportive husband and good father to help her get through it. Well, now worse news from work. Apparently, it looks like the current job I have is going to end in about 2 months. I was really hoping to get this to at least October for more chances at the permanent job. I don't know how I'll tell my wife tonight. She's going to be crushed, but there is no way she can continue at school next year. Well, my wife is trying to say all the right things, But I don't know now if this is my marriage or the job situation. I am having trouble doing even the most menial tasks. I am indecisive and can't sleep without taking something. Getting 20 years active duty military was my dream, but suddenly the money has been pulled, and a bunch of us are being let go. This has never happened before. I took this job 4 years ago with an unwritten promise of a permanent gig. Now in the next couple of months, we are done. Couldn't happen at a worse time for me. With all the other marriage issues, we might lose our house. Few months later, moving on to the present, we went through marriage counseling. First counselor was a disaster. Second one thankfully was excellent, but my wife still had issues trying to be completely open during sessions. I know this is really difficult for her, and I'm trying to be very patient. I've been able to be fully open about my problems, but trying to address everything and dealing with the idea that my wife loves me but isn't sure if she is in love with me has placed anxiety, depression issues on me like I've never dealt before. I am going through personal counseling too, taking meds. However, a year later this is still very difficult for me. I believe she isn't hiding anything from me. I've snooped in her phone, computer, and everything appears to be in the open. She is addicted to Facebook and has a multitude of friends on there, but I never cared about it before all of this happened a year ago. I felt very betrayed. Now I wonder who some of the male friends are. I'm having a difficult time moving on. Even though nothing is happening, it is hard for me to let go of the desire to snoop at her stuff. I have looked at her phone probably half a dozen times in the last year. Maybe twice last year. Because I'm trying hard to be trusting. I realize that it is very damaging to go behind someone's back or vice versa. If she is still going behind my back to look up a person's computer history, phone records, text messages, Facebook stuff, etc., it is very hard to not do this, especially when she somewhat closed down emotionally and I never noticed it. But now that I'm trying to fix things, I want more of that intimate conversation, contact. Not bonding, just intimacy, closeness. She has been a lot more open about things, especially related to him. Apparently his marriage is on the rocks, and he's been carrying on with some other woman. Thankfully he lives in Canada, thousands of miles away, and my wife seems rather disgusted about him these days. She tells me all the time that she will never ever cheat on me, and that she would never end up with him because of what he did to her years ago. I know she is trying. She deleted him from Facebook, added him, deleted him. She is conflicted about even being friends with him. And I'm trying in the nicest way possible to show that it isn't healthy for her. I know some of you may say, well, she should do this and she should do that, but I want to focus on me with this. How I should interact with her. Things I can say to her to help both of us get past all of this and rebuild our trust and become much stronger in our marriage than we have ever been before. She basically does have the power right now, and in a way it's good, but in some ways it is bad. On the good side, it allows her to be in a position that she's not accustomed to, with me being far nicer and more accommodating than I ever was in the past. But on the bad side, she's not very comfortable in that position, and while it may seem great to have me being all nice and such, it is hard for me not to continually question her about everything, which is a huge no, not according to everything I am reading here. The other thing I have going on is that my job is very unstable. I have been in this position as a military instructor for 4 years and was looking to turn it into something more semi-permanent. Another 15 years, but suddenly funding dropped, which has spiked anxiety. Stress even further. I am doing what I can to hold it together, but I have my good days and bad days. Mornings are the worst for me. Usually by mid-afternoon I've got control again. I am so hopelessly lost right now. Add to that my job issues I am having. I make $60,000 a year in a good job and support her going to school. But I may not have that job soon. I have never been this scared in my entire life. I can't find joy in anything. Trying individual counseling, but he seems to just want to repeat everything back to me that I've told him. Then my wife always wants to know how counseling went, but she gets very sad and upset when I tell her. She has trouble being honest with herself. She has pinned her unhappiness on me, when in reality it seems that she isn't sure where she is at in life. Now she's in an expensive school that we can barely afford. Well, basically can't afford, but I'm selling my soul to help her get through because I believe in yêus. Not just her. We did go to marriage counseling together, but then our counselor found out he couldn't consult military couples outside of his regular practice as a contracted counselor with the Air Force. I'm Army. So that ruined that. A month later, I downloaded No More Mr. Nice Guy last night, and holy crap, even more of a wake-up for me. I have always believed in being the nice guy and giving up whatever I needed to. Sacrificing to maintain a happy family. Without realizing that giving up that much of myself makes me something I'm not. Instead, I end up bitter, angry, and a host of other victim mentalities. I don't know if the 180 is needed quite yet. I'm going to work within the realm of the NMMNG book, and also work on my own health and well-being. I've spent a year trying to do this my own way with crappy counseling and medication. And while the medication has helped, the counseling has been substandard. Obviously, I would think any counselor worth his weight could have determined the nice guy syndrome and confronted me on it. Now for at least a little good news. While she is leaving tomorrow with the kids for 2 weeks, that will still give me some time to get my life a little more in order. Start finding my way back to things I enjoy. Get back to working out. And focus on my job. Even better news, she is talking everything about this coming school year and what she wants to do. And it involves being here. The really crappy part I am realizing is that the only way for me to break this cycle is to, for lack of a better term, fall out of love somewhat. So she can come back into the fold and feel comfortable. Just seems like such a crazy course of action. Love her less to fix the problems. But both the counselor and this book seem to say the same thing, and crazy enough it makes sense. Well, update, but not the best update. We have been seeing a new counselor. But he's apparently more into you each should build yourselves up and make this work and you are both good people blah 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 and good people can work together. Which is fine, I guess, but it isn't working all that well. My wife has systematically been slowly pushing away. In the meantime, I didn't realize she's been increasing internet contact with that guy she went to see in Arizona. Through Facebook. Not sure about other means. And now she's working on paintings for his business. I tried bringing this stuff up with the counselor and he's like, oh now. This online stuff. How important is it really? Let's worry about ourselves here and get things better between the two of you. Certainly, my wife is happy with this, because it doesn't make her face any of her issues. So, in turn I continue to snoop because she doesn't talk to me. And there are days where she has 40 messages back and forth between this other man. Days where she writes posts that only she can see, talking about how much she loves him. Then a few days later how much she hates him and why does he keep me on a string like this. Then I noticed she essentially blocked my posts from appearing on her Facebook feeds. Then also that she was blocking me from seeing a lot of her posts. It is interesting because I never even cared about Facebook or what she did before. Until she went to Arizona to meet up with him. So, I confronted her about blocking me and we got into a huge argument. And finally I said, why are you even here? If you don't want to be here, just go then. And she packed up her bags and has now been working to find an apartment. But she's staying in the guest bedroom. She's talking about a legal separation. I don't really want that, but if that's going to happen, then so be it. She can't seem to stop talking to that other guy. A guy she can't have, by the way. A guy who slept with her over 12 years ago and disappeared on her. Today I have to meet with the chaplain and the judge advocate general to discuss my legal rights in all of this. I don't want a legal separation, but I can't stop her from doing what she's going to do. If this does happen, she certainly is not going to stay in my house and I am not going to help her with her expenses. And I will fight to keep custody of the children. In a nutshell, I've spent a year trying to change myself for nothing. Be a nicer guy, show her more respect, be in tune to her needs when she was giving all of her emotional energy to another man. To say I'm frustrated is an understatement. If I even bring anything up to my wife now, she just locks herself into the guest room. I think I waited too long. 2 months later. Okay, now on to the update. About a month ago I went into the office, wife works from home in our house, and found Facebook open. And true to form, I found myself snooping yet again, and although there was only meaningless banter back and forth, there was still contact with the other guy. Then confirmed something I'd suspected of a while. She had completely blocked me from even appearing in her newsfeed. Meaning anything I posted wouldn't show up. Anything I wrote to her wouldn't appear, etc. I went ballistic on her. She tried to deny it. We had a huge fight, and I told her I don't even know why you are here. Honestly. If you want to leave, pack a bag and go. She dropped about 50 F-bombs on me, along with a bunch of other stuff that can't really be shown here, and locked the bedroom door while she packed up her stuff. She screamed at me that I was kicking her out. I told her repeatedly, calmly, that I wasn't kicking her out. I merely told her if she wants to go, that she is more than welcome to leave. That night she stayed in the guest room with every intention, she said, of contacting a lawyer in the morning for a legal separation. The next day I was a wreck at work and our chaplain took me down to our headquarters where I spoke with the officer. And between them hearing the story that has gone on for more than a year, they told me it was time to go for the divorce. They said the idea of a legal separation is not going to cut it. That my wife was trying to leave the door open to continue things going on the same way they currently are. But worse, because I'd have to support her and get nothing from it in return. I was very emotional about it. It was the last thing I ever wanted to do, to end my marriage and put my kids in that position. But I finally agreed that this has gone on long enough, and due to my current mental state, either I finally take control or I'm going to lose myself completely. They recommended a very specific law firm and I called and set up an appointment. I left for home early. My wife was downstairs sitting on the couch. She told me she had spoken with her lawyer and that she wanted to do a legal separation. I didn't show any emotion. I just told her that it's fine. I've made an appointment with a law firm and tomorrow morning I'm going to file for divorce. Pin drop. I could tell from the expression on her face that my reply was not at all what she was expecting. Why a divorce? And I explained that I was done. I told her that a legal separation doesn't take it far enough and that I was ready to distance myself further and move on with my life without her. That I know I'd be fine and I'd meet someone new and everything would be okay. Apparently, her lawyer had actually mentioned the law firm I was going to by name, saying it was the worst ones to go up against. That gave me some nice personal satisfaction. It was interesting. Later on, looking back on this moment, I realized that this was the point where suddenly, she was not in the driver's seat and had absolutely no control over what was about to happen. And it had a profound effect. A lasting effect so far. My comment: do you think OP is starting to stand up for himself? Part 2 will be coming in a few hours. Sub and go grab a coffee before